anyone know Vice?
Yep.
Okay, so we're gonna give you the introduction.
Shane Smith is here. He is the co-founder and CEO of the international media company Vice. He wants Vice to be the next CNN, the next ESPN, and the next MTV digitally. You've also said you want to be the Time Warner of the street.
We already are the Time Warner of the street.
Vice magazine, we started in Montreal in 1994. It's become a global empire. You got Vice.com, international network of digital channels, TV production studio, a record label, an in-house creative services agency. Describe the Vice brand. What is it?
Vice is the voice of a generation. The world's first truly global, all-digital youth media company. Every day, Vice delivers hours of original video online, covering the news, culture, and entertainment that defines the world we live in. Our reporters are on the ground, telling the stories that matter most in a language that young people understand and trust.
Young people today have been marketed to since they were newborns. They've developed the most sophisticated bullshit detectors of all time. And the only way to circumvent that bullshit detector is to not bullshit. The people who shoot it have to be young. The people who cut it have to be young. The hosts have to be young. So if something is created in a boardroom, it will not work.
Vice and its growing network of channels is defining the future of news and entertainment for young people everywhere.
But there's a changing of the guard every generation in media, and we are the changing of the guard for Gen Y.
And once more, hello and thank you so much for having us here. It's a huge honor to be at the DMC and presenting in a room with so many professional people. My name is Morten Grubak and I'm the Executive Creative Director of Vice Virtue. And with me on stage today, I brought some of the best creatives that we have in the network. Creative Director Emil Asmussen and Art Director Dimitri Depeva. Today we're going to start out with a short introduction of our company point of view. And it's also our philosophy, but most of all, it's a mindset which we use to stay positive while creating ideas for the future. After that, we're going to deep dive into two cases. The first one is Carling's Address the Future, and it's also the world's first digital clothing collection. Just right after that, we're going to have Emil diving into a project called Meet Q. This is the first genderless voice assistant. But we have a lot to cover, so maybe let's just get cracking. Okay, let's start by zooming out a little bit. So the world is changing, but we've seen major shift over the past few years. But we've also seen a lot of new ideas getting born out of almost every section of society. And even though this collection of imageries looks crazy, there's still a lot of great things happening in the world at the same time. Take for instance, this girl, Greta Thunberg, is one girl with one idea. And actually an idea so impactful that it travels across the globe and actually had 1 million students participating in 100 countries globally in school strike for the climate every Friday last year. And it's actually working. People are starting to change their behavior. A lot more people are starting to take the trains, also trying to live vegan, or trying to just buy more second-hand clothes instead of just like buying new ones. And this is a movement created by a girl who's only 16. So I think that's pretty positive compared to the gallery that I just showed you. Every year, we ask our audience about which feelings they value the most. And normally we see feelings like compassion and respect for each other really score high. But the last couple of years, we actually seen a word like justice really scoring high. So the young generation want justice, and they want equality for all. but they also want to fight for it. And that's a new shift, because that means that we've gone from a lot of passive words like kindness and humanity into more interactive words, words that are feelings and values that people want to react on. And again, our wallet answer to this higher call. We're going from price to purpose, and 76% of all young people that we are asking said that a brand should take a stand in a social cause. So purpose is no longer just a trend, it's actually a reality.
So we believe the world is young. That's not a statement about a target group or an audience or some group of people. It's actually a statement about the whole world, like the planet itself. Because we believe that this is not the beginning of the end. This is the beginning of a new world. And it's not a broken world, even though a lot of people are saying that it is and everything is going to end in 30 years. We believe that this is a world in motion. And because everything is changing right now, we also have the possibility to actually change it in the direction that we wanted to see it go. And if we look at Gen Z, sort of the generation that is going to be the next to inherit all the responsibilities and all the great jobs and whatnot, they're really eager and ready to own this new world. And what they're doing is they're questioning everything. So they're not just waiting for the government to save them. They're looking at everything, even brands and marketeers and advertising people, to help out and come with solutions. Because they're also very passionate and they want to do stuff themselves. So they also want to see brands and everyone else do something. So the two ideas that we're going to present today are very much about doing something and believing in something, instead of just talking about stuff or supporting stuff. It's actually saying that brands need to, get shit done and get to shape the world they want to be a part of. So we have, as Morten already said, a digital clothing collection, and we have a genderless voice that is a little blurping around. But I'm going to give it to Morten, and he's going to present the first case.
Thank you so much. Sorry for standing over here. My keynote speaker is here and not there, so it's not too high from all you guys. But let's kick off. Does anyone recognize this girl? Yes. Her name is Little Michaela, and she's a digital influencer, meaning that she's not real. She's also an Instagram phenomenon with more than 1.6 million followers on Instagram. And just the recent year, she's been doing collaboration with everything from Prada to Dazed and Confused. The estimated cost of this digital influencer is said to be around $6 million. And she was a huge inspiration when we had to came up with this idea for the digital collection. This is our cheaper version of Little Michaela, and her name is Pearl, but it also illustrates how she's made, and also how, in a way, how easy it is to actually find a picture and add your character to it. I think we invested around 10,000 euros in Pearl, and most of it went to her eyes and actually her hair. But it's just to tell you that it doesn't have to be expensive to start this journey working with 3D and creating a digital avatar. But let's get back to the case and the client itself. So the client's name is called Carlings, and we have to rewind time a little bit back to 1985. This is the first year that Carling opened up their first store in Oslo, and they were the first ones to actually offer denim wear as a lifestyle product. At that point of time, the Norwegian people didn't really know what to think about it, because before that, denim wear has been looked at as workwear. But then this happened. Bruce Springsteen, born in the USA, world tour. And of course he came to Oslo, and he actually held a concert where 40,000 people showed up. And Bruce also showed up. He showed up, of course, in denim from head to toe. And the day after the concert, everything was sold out. And Bruce actually created a demand lasting for almost 3 decades. And today, Carlings has around 200 physical stores around the Nordics. They're also the franchise taker of brands like Levi's, Wrangler, and major brands like Nike in the Nordics as well. So it's a $500 million company worth today. But there's a funny twist to this. They actually never made it online. So last summer, they gave us a call. They knew they had to do something, so they called us, hey Virtue, we'd like to open up online. Can you help us create some awareness around this? And we were like, sure, but what's the catch? How are you gonna stand out in this ginormous Red Sea of giants who are paying a lot of AdWords to be #1 on the Google search list? And they were like, you tell us. And they were actually absolutely right, because that is our job sometimes, to actually figure out a way to actually have a client standing out in a really, really crowded world of other great brands. So on the way home, we're sitting a little bit and talking about this brief, and we felt like, okay, this feels a little bit like a brief that comes 10 years too late. And we were laughing a little bit about it. We thought like it's something in the early 2000s or something like that. But then at the same time, we start just doing the classic creative rehearsal where we said like, what happened if we actually had the brief about opening up a shop 10 years ahead? What would be the content of an internet shop opening 10 years ahead? So with that in mind, and also little Michaela in mind, and how she actually changed the rules on Instagram and blurring the lines between reality and mixed reality. We also knew that we have, as a company, because of our POV and because we believe in a better world and we want to change the world, we also knew to work together with Carlings, we had to touch upon sustainability. Fast fashion. Carlings is a fast fashion brand. And fast fashion is the world's second largest polluter. So we knew we had to touch upon that. And Carlings is actually doing a lot of good things for sustainability. They just have a really, really hard time communicating it, because they do the classic thing where they actually put it into number or charts or something else. So young people don't really listen to whenever they say like, oh, we spent 10 million liter less on your denim jeans than before. And it's just like, yeah. And just to put everything into a context, air traffic is number 10 on the list of most polluting industries. So it means that fashion is really a huge thing. So the final insight for this project we actually got from another angle, and that's from a company called Barclaycard. Barclaycard is a credit card, and they oversee almost every transaction online in the UK. And last year they made a report where, after reading that, we found a small note that actually stated that 1 out of 9 British shoppers online actually admit to have bought a piece of clothing with one sole purpose of taking a picture of it to Instagram before sending return to the company again, or put it into the closet for never using it again. So that in mind, we understood there's a huge overconsumption of clothes getting bought for just having your Instagram game up and running. So we knew that we could tap into this and see if we can create a tool that can actually help people being creative, but at the same time not harm the environment. So with all this in mind, we start putting it into the system that we have. And that's a system we use to sanity check our ideas with. And it contains of 3 core pillars. The first one is the 5 news criteria, global conversation, and then the cultural nerve. The 5 news criteria is basically what every piece of journalism out there is built upon. You need to have conflict, impact, sensation, identification to actually make a good piece of journalism. At the same time, the global conversation is all the conversation people are having from Shanghai to Latin America. And that could be anything from the future of the internet to the future of unemployment or climate change, for instance. And then we have the last pillar, which is culture nerve. And that's the thing where you need to use your antennas. And that's all the conversation people are having around their lunch table, at the pub or whatnot. And that's the things that people are talking about but hasn't really got into mainstream media yet. And when you start mapping these things out, and you can see that you have a clear path of like hitting more than just one, then you know you have something really, really powerful. And for us, it was, of course, we knew we were going to have a conflict because we're going to talk about fast fashion, and it could potentially backlash for the company. But we also knew that we could tap into climate change and the future of the internet, but not best, influencers. People are sick and tired of influencers. Influencers also associated with overconsumption, fake, and not having a point of view. So we knew that if we created something valuable for them, we could change the perception of these people as well. We don't see influencers as a negative thing. We see them more as a modern artist in a way, where of course the post is their canvas, and they can actually create and push fashion a lot faster than the traditional fashion weeks. So Instagram is becoming the runway of the world. So that was our idea: address the future, a digital clothing collection with zero environmental impact. So with that concept put into a deck, we traveled to Oslo to present in front of the board. And I remember I felt pretty comfortable going in there because I think that we had something really, really great for them. And I think we were hitting so much and we were pushing them creatively, and I think we just nailed it. But after the presentation, the room got completely quiet. And I got quiet as well. And I started to doubt the whole thing, but maybe it's easier just to hear it from the CEO.
That meeting was the strangest meeting of my life, because actually I honestly didn't understand what they were talking about, making a digital collection and all those kind of things. I was like, this can't be serious. This is nothing that the consumers would be interested in.
So as you can see, we got pretty, I think confused about the whole thing. So they said, we're gonna call you back. And they did. They called us back 2 days after, and they said, like, we really love the energy, the innovation about it, but it feels like it's too risky. Can you please come up with some new ideas that kind of like has the same bravery and the same boldness, but it's not a digital collection? And I was like, sure, we can do that. So I invited them to a workshop 2 weeks after, under the impression that we're going to present new ideas. But what we did instead was kind of like, we spent 2 weeks building out the strategy. So when they arrived, we just started to present the same thing all over again, just with a more built out strategy to it. And actually halfway through the meeting, the CEO finally put his fist to the table and said, like, okay, let's fucking do it. And we actually, I was like, you can't stop us now, we're not done acclimating around this project. So, but he said, like, let's run. And so we spent the next 2 months actually creating this project. And maybe DJ, if you crank up the stereo, I'm gonna play the case video for y'all. Oh, wait, can I crank it up over here maybe? Is it, yeah? Okay, let's see.
Our generation lives in a paradox. On one hand, we love to express our style and creativity online. On the other, we want to reduce all the production waste that has a negative impact on the environment. A paradox caused by the unwritten rule that we can't be seen online in the same outfit twice. So how do we secure a better future while maintaining our creative output online? With a digital clothing collection, a series of virtually fitted fashion items that you only wear in digital space. This is how it works. First, you take a picture. You choose a product from the webshop before a 3D tailor adjusts the product to your image. Now, your outfit is ready to be shared on social media. This is a new way of expressing our fashion creativity without leaving a negative footprint on the world. The solution did not only challenge today's e-commerce conventions and brand experiences, it challenged an entire industry's ideas and innovations towards more sustainable solutions. And once the webshop was open, the newest fashion phenomena traveled across the globe.
Altså dels er der jo det miljømæssige aspekt, at vi faktisk ikke producerer tøj.
Address the future. They are one of the few brands that have a creative approach to this problem.
And as you can see, we had, thank you so much. We had Pearl starring it in as well, but we also had another gentleman being in the video, and that's actually Dimitri. And that was actually because he actually designed the whole collection. He's going to talk a little bit more about how to design a digital collection.
Здравствуйте. So, I mean, like, when talking about like digital fashion and stuff, I guess a lot of you must wonder how to actually create digital garments. At least we did that, trust me. It was kind of a weird process finding out how this could be possible. But in fact, like, it's funny how much this process is similar to the process if you design clothes in real life fashion. First, you would start to seek inspiration, of course, get the mood boards going. And in our case, we were very inspired by like Tekken, the video game, anime, manga, and just cyberpunk in general, because like it's all aesthetics that like kind of feature the whole crossover from physical to digital, so we thought that was a very clear link and a way to go. And then you would create the design drawings, of course, and this is also how you do it in real life. And after that, you deliver it to a pattern maker. But what's so amazing about designing digitally is that you are not locked to physical limitations when you're designing. You can stitch together digitally a lot of great like materials that you cannot do like in real life because they wouldn't function together. So it's like a huge playground of possibilities. And then the pattern maker starts to like get your design drawings, like split them together, make them into technical drawings that you normally would send to a manufacturer. But the manufacturer in our case was a 3D designer, or more specifically a 3D tailor. And the 3D tailor starts to get all of these like technical parts together, as you see up in the right corner. And then you have a fully rendered outfit digitally.
I think another detail which is really important is once you just did one piece of clothing, you can multiply it millions of times. Meaning so you don't have any waste or anything. You just do it once and then it's copy-paste from there on.
Exactly. So, I mean, like right now there's a lot of things going on with digital clothes and people are talking about it, and it's nice to see that there's so many people experimenting around all of this idea. But one example that we find super interesting, I don't know if you know The Fabricant, any of you? But it's a Dutch digital fashion studio that sold this dress on a digital online auction to a Bitcoin billionaire, and they sold it for $9,500. So that's pretty amazing to see, but also like kind of futuristic, but it is happening right now. And in terms of like more like business, we think this will grow for sure, but if you imagine this growing, let's make an example. If you take 1% of the total market share of the fashion industry and make that into digital fashion, that will mean a total revenue of on plus $25 billion, so that's a lot. So we definitely also think that it's something that should be taken seriously because it will eventually happen a lot in the future. But talking about this like whole field about virtual influencers and digital clothing, it's kind of like there's this kind of tech fear that exists among a lot of people, and it kind of makes sense because as it is for now, we don't really have the language yet because it's kind of new, it's kind of like up in the air and stuff, and like small things are happening. But like we believe definitely that it's an open box of possibilities. It's like Pandora's box. It's a huge playground. And we hope that this can lead you to the thinking that the world is young and full of possibilities.
Okay, so I'm going to talk about the second case, which is called Meet Q. And just to show that this is actually a model that we try to use, we're going to go through it one more time. So, news criteria. We tapped into timeliness, what's going on right now, and conflict, definitely conflict. Then we looked at global conversations, and we have this whole, probably all of you have some kind of device on you that you can activate with your voice. And some of you probably also have one at home. So there's a voice revolution happening right now. Then also gender equality is definitely something that we're discussing across the globe. And then for the cultural nerve, we tapped into sexism and gender bias. And just a sort of a note that if you take conflict and sexism and put it together in an idea like stuff like this is gonna happen online. That you're gonna have a Marty guy who just wants me fired. But I'm gonna go back a bit and tell you about like what we created and why Marty got so mad about it. So the reason we ended up here is actually kind of similar to where you guys are right now. So some of you probably know the Webby Awards. Yes, now? And they also have this thing called Webby Talks, where this guy called Gianfranco, he goes around and he talks about the future of the internet and what is happening. And he shared this anecdote about one of his friends who had a 5-year-old kid. Father came home and he saw that the kid, they had also recently gotten an Alexa. And the kid was just yelling at the Alexa. He's like, play music, turn on the TV, shut down Netflix. And the father was just kind of watching it thinking, I wonder what that's going to do to him and his view on women and roles if he continues doing this for the next 5 years or 10 years or 15 years. And we thought that's like an interesting observation, that we have this thing about gender and voice and why do we do with it. So it got us thinking, why is it that we gender AI? So we have some voices that are almost all female. I bet that most of your voice assistants, they come per standard as female. And then we have a few that are male. If we sort of dive into the secretary or assistant role, like it's starting to get interesting because all Siri in all languages except British for some weird reason comes for standard as a female voice, but in all other languages she's also female. It's the same with Alexa, it's the same with Google Secretary. And we started looking into, is this just a coincidence? And it's definitely not a coincidence. So tech companies, they would of course reach out to people and they would test the voices. And what they found out is people are more comfortable with giving an order to a female voice. The reason behind that, we also found out, is because like if we go back and look at our society maybe 50 years ago, the role of a secretary is primarily a female. So we're taking our bias as a society into the creation of voices in the future. And if we're looking at experts, if we're looking at almost all banking apps or insurance apps or IBM Watson, they have a male voice. So there's something weird about how we choose to gender the voices. There's something that we have to take into consideration is this something that we want to take into the future and keep alive? There's also another issue that we almost lost because there's so many things we started getting interested in. It's like, why is there actually only 2 options? So if you think about a robot or technology, it is born genderless. Gender is something that we apply to it. That's one thing. But another thing is also that technology should be this thing that is progressive and pushing us further and takes us into the future. But when we look at the old school world, passports and stuff, they're starting to feature a 3rd gender. So it feels very weird that in the technology sphere, we haven't thought about that. And we started looking for genderless voices and genderless voice assistants. And every time we sort of hit the next page in Google, we were so sure that we were going to find it, but it didn't exist. And if you also look at the people, especially young people, like gender is definitely changing. So last year we did some research with Vice Voices, and 41% of Gen Z, they identify as neutral on the gender scale. That is crazy. Like, I was so surprised to hear this number. But that means going forward, gender is going to be a much more fluid size. And if we look at the voice market, by 2025, it's going to be $31 billion. And according to TechCrunch, by 2023, there's going to be more than 8 billion voice assistants. So everything is kind of just happening right now. So we're at this tipping point where right now we actually have the opportunity and the possibility to do something and make sure that the AI we're creating right now is actually going in the direction we wanted it to, instead of maybe representing, an old way of looking at things. And we believe that innovation should progress humanity and not just technology. So also that the big tech companies, they start to take responsibility, which is proportional to the power they exercise on all of us. So it shouldn't just be about technology and evolving that for the sake of technology. It should actually be for the sake of evolving humanity. So we created Q, the first genderless voice. The reason we did that was because we wanted to create a voice that we knew that even though the tech companies had ignored the gender for so long, like if we created a thing that would get people all around the world talking, they would have to listen. This is the case video for Q, and it shows a bit about how we created it and the impact it had.
Although I have typically female biological sex characteristics, my gender identity is non-binary. I am not a man or a woman. This bill is a victory and an important step towards equality.
Alexa, what's in the news today?
California begins issuing state IDs with a third gender
Colorado
option.
becomes fifth state to allow third gender on licenses.
Germans can now choose third gender option on legal records.
Companies turn to different types of research that tells them people expect a female voice. Sometimes we go back to these stereotypes, and what happens is we're reinforcing them. We're not changing them. There's no reason we can't have more options.
Audio researchers defined a frequency range which is neutral. We recorded several voices, worked on the pitch, we worked on the format filter, and we worked on the tone of the voice. We tested several different voices on thousands of people to create a gender-neutral voice.
Yeah, society always wants to put you in a box.
I hope that people would not assume gender based on voices more in the future.
My voice is more than a pre-assigned gender.
My voice is more than a box to click.
My voice is more than this
or that. It's everything in between.
It's a voice of progression.
A voice of hope.
A voice that moves us forward when others are looking back.
Have you ever wondered what a genderless voice sounds like?
To fight bias against smarticism. Here is what it sounds like.
Hi, I'm Q.
And don't worry, we're going to play more of Q in a little bit. This was just sort of to set the scene. So as you saw in the film, we launched it with Pride, especially Copenhagen Pride, which is sort of one of the biggest collectives to represent the full gender spectrum. We also launched it with the Danish tech ambassador, Kasper Klinge, because Denmark actually has a tech ambassador, which is kind of new and exciting. And then with Equal AI, which is an NGO that fights for gender equality within AI. And they have some really some badass people on the board, like Jimmy Wales, who's one of the founders of Wikipedia, and also Ariana Huffington. We're very proud to get them on board on this project as well. So the process of actually creating the voice was probably the most complicated thing, because as we couldn't find anyone who'd done a genderless voice before, we had no idea how to do it, so we were just sort of figuring out as we went along. But first step was definitely research, and we found Anna Jørgensen, who is a non-binary person, but also a linguist, and also wrote a thesis about how trans people change their voices. So Anna was really able to help us understand how do we perceive a male voice and a female voice, and what is this sphere in between where it could potentially be genderless. Then we started recording voices, and we had amazing people who are non-binary themselves who chipped in with their voice, and that was sort of the backbone of creating Q. Then we went into the modulating, where Nis, a sound designer, he was able to help us take the research from Anna and actually start to sort of modulate all the voices into something that would sound genderless. But then we also knew that we couldn't just go out and say, hey world, here's a genderless voice. Like, we needed to make sure that we had sort of the stats and the data to back it up. So we started testing Q, and we ended up testing Q across more than 4,500 people in Europe. So we would do one version We would get feedback from all over the world, and then we would test it again. So we went through 12 different iterations until we had a voice where 50% perceived it as genderless, we had 26% who perceived it as masculine, and 24% as feminine, which meant that no one could really place it. It was sort of an equal split, and we were really happy about that result, because we knew from Anna's research that the human brain is so wired to gender a voice that we would never be able to create something that was 100% genderless for everyone. So that result, that everyone was sort of conflicted about it, was actually just what we needed. So what did we actually create when we say we created a genderless voice? We created a voice that is based on 3 key principles. It's going to be very tricky and complicated, and it was tricky for me because I had never worked with sound or voices before, so we just sort of learned as we went along. But first thing is not that complicated, it's frequency. So basically, masculine voices, lower frequency, feminine voice, higher frequency. The spot in between, that was sort of the key insight we had, is something that the human ear is not able to really tell if it's either or. Then we found out S and T sounds and vowels as well. It's very different how a man pronounces S's and women pronounce T's. So, for example, a feminine sounding voice would have longer S's and T's in the end, but also vowel length, that it's perceived more masculine if I speak like this, very staccato. But if I have long vowels, you're gonna perceive me as more feminine. That was also stuff we had to take into consideration creating this voice. The last thing, and now it's super complicated, is something called a formant filter. And for a long time I thought it was called a format filter, but it's a formant filter. Basically, it's a digital tool that enables us to manipulate the voice without it sounding like a robot. So it does the same thing as when I'm making a vowel, like then if I change the shape of my mouth into o, e, a, e, I'm basically saying the same sound, it's just my mouth is doing different things. And that's the same thing that the formant filter did, which meant that we could, create a voice and change it a whole lot, but it never sounded just like a robot speaking. So what we did was that we created a prototype of Q on the site, genderlessvoice.com. It's still up and running, so you can all go visit it if you want. But we're gonna give you a demo. So we allow people to hear Q, but also to play around with the frequency. So as the default Q was in the gender neutral, if you pulled it up, it became higher, and if you pull it down, lower. Just gonna play it for you, and you're actually gonna hear a bit of how Q sounded.
Hi, I'm Q, the world's first genderless voice assistant. Think of me like Siri or Alexa, but neither male nor female. I'm created for a future where we are no longer defined by gender, but rather how we define ourselves. My voice was recorded by people who neither identify as male nor female, and then altered to sound gender neutral, putting my voice between 145 and 175 Hz, a range defined by audio researchers. But for me to become a third option for voice assistants, I need your help. Share my voice with Apple, Amazon, Google, and Microsoft. And together we can ensure that technology recognizes us all. Thanks for listening. Q.
So we asked everyone on the site to share their voice to make sure that all the big tech companies, they knew about Q. And people did, so more than 50,000 people tweeted at Apple, Amazon, Microsoft, and Google. And it really got the dialogue going, and it also very quickly spread into, you also saw this in the case film, but into sort of mainstream media. We even had Fox News talking about it, which was exciting. But it also kind of spread to parts of the world that we had no idea would actually spread. So Japan Today, India Times, and a lot of sort of places where we couldn't even read the article. We could just see in between it says Q genderless voice. So it spread across the world, which was exciting to see that it wasn't just something that we discussed in the West, it was actually all over. And then something interesting happened, that a lot of art institutions, they wanted to reach out and implement Q. So it started from being this sort of creative advertising idea, then traveled into becoming art. And actually this Tuesday, the doors open to an exhibition called Beastly Designs of the Year in London, where you can go see Q. It also did another surprising thing, that UNESCO and the UN, they included Q in a report on gender equality in voice skills, which was also super exciting, that all of a sudden, because we did something that hadn't been done before, we were sort of the experts, and UNESCO reached out to us and asked, can we feature your research? And we were like, it's not really research, it's a thing we created. And then it actually also happened that a lot of the companies that we tweeted at, they started reaching out, and we had more than 50 companies who reached out and saying, hey, what is up with Q? Can we implement it? What are we going to do with it? And that was exciting, but the most exciting thing was actually that people like Oliver reached out. I'm just going to take a second to read this out loud. As someone who finds it very hard to identify my gender, this literally made me burst into tears. To even know that this might be possible in the future means so much to me. So that was like actually one of the most important things, that people who have a hard time identifying as one gender, they actually thought this meant something to them, and that the future could actually look a bit brighter because of this, this project. So what does the future hold for Q? Because all you see now is like a prototype. So we're working very hard with one of the partners from the logos, actually, I'm not going to say which one, on actually creating Q and turning Q into a fully fledged AI voice. But one thing that's been very important for us is that we want to keep Q open source, so it can be used basically everywhere. So we had offers from companies who just wanted to buy out Q and say like, now you're going to live in a navigation system. We were very certain like we didn't want that. We wanted to actually see if we could make something that in maybe 5 years' time is in a lot of different places. So we're almost at the end, and we're going to talk a bit about what have we learned about doing these types of projects, because they're definitely different from what I used to do as a copywriter, writing TV scripts and that stuff. So we've learned, first and foremost, it's not very expensive. It's a lot cheaper than doing a TV ad, which is crazy when you look at the amount of people who are talking about it. So money shouldn't be what's stopping you. Is it really complex? Yes, but it's also really interesting. As I said before, like, you're gonna be the expert, and I heard this quote once saying like, there is no maps, we are the map makers, and it really made sense to me with these projects, because like we couldn't ask anyone, how do you create a digital clothing collection or genderless voice? We sort of just had to try and fail until we found something, which also made it very, very interesting. So is it hard? Yes, it definitely takes a lot of work and a lot of research and thinking, but it's also, and I think the guys agree, probably the most rewarding thing we've ever done, actually creating something that might shape the future in a different way. That's it for us.